Can't sleep when I lay in bed. Too much thinking in my head. I don't know what to do anymore. But come on now, tell me the score. Is there anything I can do to get out of these tragic blues? I'm a victim of circumstance. I never really had a chance.
Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today we're going to be talking about caregiving. I have a special guest on our show who has a lot of experience about caregiving and other services provided to the community. Thank you, Sharon, for being a guest on our show. I always like to start off by thanking the guests because I know people are busy, and when they take time to come out, to our show and just kind of do a segment to provide information to the community, it really, really means a lot to me. So I just want to say thank you. Well, let's start off by just saying what agency you work for and what do you actually do?
I work for myself, and people think it's a great thing, but you work 24/7 when you work for yourself, but that's okay. My company is Roseville West Services. I'm a certified senior advisor and care manager. What that means is I help people, loved ones, and people who are going through the aging journey.
Oh, nice.
I got into this business because I took care of my own two parents, and as you know, I owned and operated an in-home health care company. When I sold that, I used my experience to be able to help other families who all of a sudden find themselves in crisis or with a parent who needs help and they don't know what questions to ask, what to do, or where to turn.
Yeah.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
So I wanted to use my experience to be able to help other people and families through that.
Awesome, awesome. So let's start off by kind of talking about what is caregiving. Let's kind of talk about that.
Okay, well, basically the term caregiver is just like the name implies. It's taking care of another person. And it can be anything from taking care of a child, but normally it's associated with a sick, disabled, or elderly person. Normally if it's a child, the terms parent or guardian or foster parent usually are used to give more specificity, I can say that, specificness to the term. Okay.
Yeah.
But usually in the industry, when you talk about caregiver, it's usually for someone who is disabled or a senior person, and that person is no longer able to conduct their own activities of daily living, and we call those ADLs. And that means dressing yourself, feeding yourself, bathing yourself, sometimes getting up from a chair or a bed. And then the instrumental activities of daily living kind of go along with that. That means, can you shop for yourself? Can you prepare your own meals? Do housework? Can you transport yourself either by driving or lining up a bus or dial a ride, something like that. So a caregiver is someone who helps people who can no longer do for themselves, either because of physical limitations or mental limitations.
Okay. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your personal experience being a caregiver. What was that like, and how long did you actually have to, take care of your parents?
Well, let me tell you, Jesse, I was in the Bay Area. I was born and raised here in this area, and my parents were here, and I would always come to visit them. And I started noticing little things that were different. And of course, back then I didn't know what I know now. And for instance, my dad, who had no hobbies except watching the news and commenting on the political scene and watching sports and reading the paper, all of a sudden stopped doing those activities, and I thought that was strange. So I made a mental note, but I didn't know what really it meant. I just, I noticed these things. Now, of course, I realized that was the beginnings of dementia. He could not process that information. So as I was at work one day, after having visited them on the weekend, just this little light bulb went off in my head, and I said, you know what? My parents are both getting older, and I've seen these changes in my dad. And what happens if there's an emergency? I'm 3 hours away in the Bay Area. I won't be able to just scoot over there. And prior to that, I had pulled out the equity in my home in the Bay Area and purchased a home here because I knew I need to come back here to take care of them.
Yeah.
So I was renting out that home, and I thought to myself, well, perhaps now it's time. I started making arrangements to move back here to be able to take care of them. And I will tell you, that was in the nick of time, because it wasn't even a year after I had moved back here that 1 month my dad had a heart attack, and then the following week Mom went into the hospital with a bleeding ulcer. And I was then the only family caregiver. So I was glad that I moved back here when I did. But I got thrown into the world of caregiving. I didn't know the difference between assisted living and independent living, had never heard of a board and care, what's a durable power of attorney, all of these things. And I'm making decisions for them at this point, sometimes life and death decisions. It was quite the experience. And of course, with two, you have two that you're getting the emergency calls to go to the hospital.
Wow.
And as I said, Dad was put on hospice, and of course I wasn't real familiar with that. And I found that I needed to move Mom in to live with me. She could not live independently. So I got thrown in to the whole world of senior care and navigating the aging journey. Through that experience, I learned a lot about caregiving and taking care of the parents, resources, what to do if, and then I had my own in-home care company, non-medical in-home care company, where I sent caregivers to help families like what I was dealing with. So I learned about that. When I sold that business, I wanted to stay in the world of senior care and help families through the experience, because I know what it's like all of a sudden to have a crisis hit and not know what to do. What I like to do, however, is get to families before there's a crisis and help them understand what paperwork do you need to have ready. Let's look at choices when the care level changes. And I know it will someday. I actually had cancer myself. I'm fine. But I know that each of us in our life at some time, we're going to need some help. And it's better to plan ahead, because then you have options. Whereas if you're reacting in a crisis, you don't have as many options, or you're not making good decisions. So that's what I do, is I try to help families and individuals through the planning process, or when there is a crisis, to make good decisions.
Yeah, it's you know, my recently this year, my mom had a major surgery because she was diagnosed with cancer. And afterwards, I flew to Chicago, and my sister, another sister lives out of town in another state. She came to Chicago, so all of my mom kids were there. We were all there to be a circle of support for her. And so afterwards, after the surgery, of course, it was a success. But now my mom at that point had needed to be taken care of. You know, I couldn't stay that long because I had to come back to work. But one of my older sisters, she had the availability to stay. So she stayed a little longer to, you know, provide caretaking to my mom. And I noticed that it kind of affected her a little bit. I know mentally she was drained. I know she was tired physically, and because those are things that she had to do that she wasn't used to doing. Not that she minded. I mean, she was all for it because obviously she loved my mom, but it did take a toll on her a little bit. And so I guess I want to ask, like, how did it affect you mentally? Like, how did it affect you when you was, you know, had to do all that work for your parents?
Well, you notice how I tried to say specificity.
Yeah.
Long-term effects. You know. I had a friend at the time whose husband, unfortunately, he was going through cancer at the same time I was. And we used to call each other, and it would be so exciting when we got to go out and go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And we would excitedly talk about how we got out and we could talk to the grocery clerk.
Yeah.
You know, that was a big thing. You become very isolated.
Yes.
And as you said, your sister wants to do this because you love your parents.
Yeah.
But the fact is, anybody who's had children knows how tired you get taking care of a little kid.
Yeah.
Well, take a little kid and put it in a big body.
Yeah.
And physically, yes, you get drained. And mentally, it's
Yeah.
draining because you're in the position of making decisions for this person who has always been the one taking care of you.
Yes.
So that role reversal, that flip, is disconcerting mentally. You don't know how far to go with it.
Yeah.
And of course, you're having to do the dance because at times you have to go the mile, because the first rule of thumb, as I tell all my clients, is make sure your loved one is safe. And you have to love them enough to let them be angry with you. And they're going to be, because they don't understand totally what's happening to them.
Yeah.
And maybe they do, but they're angry about it. So who are they going to take that out on?
Exactly.
And who are they going to blame? And that generation, I have come to find, really has a fear, and in a lot of situations, unfortunately, it's valid,
Yeah.
that their kids are going to throw them in a home and forget about them and help themselves to the assets.
Yeah.
So they really have resistance to a higher level of care or having other people come in. So you're dealing with a lot of issues that you would not be necessarily with a child, and it is draining. You become isolated, you become physically tired, you have no more life, absolutely no more life, and depending on what disease or condition your parent has, it can become very difficult to deal with. For instance, if you have a parent who has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or any one of 80 diseases that cause symptoms of dementia, that person can become a handful.
Yeah.
Paranoia can be a side symptom of dementia, and they can think that you're out to get them, or be just very unreasonable in what their expectations are of what they can do. Maybe they insist on being able to get in the car and drive,
Yeah.
and that can be a very dangerous thing. So you may have to say no or hide the keys, and there's going to be World War III.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to deal with that to keep them safe. Or you may need to set limits on cooking, or dad using the power chainsaw in the backyard, any number of instances that you could think up. So you are very challenged in ways that you would not be necessarily with a child, because usually with a child you have more parental authority or
Yeah.
control, and you don't with, say, a parent
Yeah.
or
Oh, yeah.
a sibling that you're taking care of. So it can be very challenging.
Yeah, I know, you know, one of the things that we were trying to tell my mom was just take it easy. You know, you just had a surgery, and my mom, the surgery was a success. She's very strong-willed, very independent. But we would tell her, like, you know, you really need to take it easy. And so, of course, she wanted to do certain things, and, you know, and despite the fact that my sister was there, she still wanted to maintain her autonomy. And so she didn't have a setback, but she had a little scare, meaning that her body wasn't feeling like it was when she first got out. I think she just kind of had a little scare. Maybe things wasn't like she wanted to be, and she rushed to the hospital. And of course, you know, the doctor told her, they ran tests, they told her, oh, you're fine, you know, nothing wrong. But when she got back home, that little scare caused her to you know, submit to my sister as far as receiving the care from her that she need. I mean, come on, I mean, my sister, you know, was washing clothes, cooking for her, cleaning, but these are things she just got to the hospital, and the next day, or when she did got to the hospital, the next day she wanted to resume these, you know,
activities.
And you can't do that. And so because that's a whole nother challenge in itself, when you know that a loved one, regardless if it's mental or physical condition going on, it'll pose a challenge when you know that there are limitations, or when you know that they can't really do it or shouldn't be doing these things at the moment, but they just want to do it anyway.
Right, right.
And how or what can a caregiver do to try and talk the person into getting the care that they need
When
from
they meet
them?
that resistance.
Yeah, when they, what can they do to kind of soften that up and really just get in there and really do what they need to do?
Well, I'd say if they're a praying person, hit your knees, first of all. Yeah. And then secondly, get a third-party professional involved. Some of the larger health care providers, such as Kaiser and Sutter, they have social workers available. So I would get the doctor involved and a social worker, because if they hear from a professional that they need such and such, they're going to listen. They're never going to listen to a family member, especially someone that was a child that they're used to telling them what for, not vice versa.
Yeah.
And that's why oftentimes when I'm called into a case as a case manager, people will listen to me because I'm in the field. I can be saying the same thing as a child, but because I'm a professional that does this for a living also, it helps when they're paying you a fee. They're going to always listen like the doctor would not. They're going to listen. They're going to listen to that third person because they don't have the dynamics that they do with a family member, and they'll put that aside and they'll listen. So I definitely recommend getting the first level, getting the doctor involved. And if they do need to, bring in a social worker, and social workers have geriatric care managers, which is basically like me. I'm a care manager. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
And they have those available within most insurance providers. So that would be very, very helpful.
I have a friend who, and I always try to be transparent on these shows, so I can really, let people know that, this stuff is real.
It is very real.
But I have a friend who lives in Chicago, and her mom was diagnosed with a mental health condition, and the condition causes her mom to have very aggressive behavior, physically and verbally. At one point, her mom ended up physically attacking her while another friend was there and put her in the headlock. It's not funny because every time me and my friend talk about it, we laugh. It's not funny, but we laugh because, but her mom put her in a headlock just for no reason, And the friend was there, and so my friend was telling her friend that was there, she was telling the person, hey, get my mom up off me. And so her mom was telling her friend, no, you better not put your hands on me. I'm gonna call the police. But, so they went back and forth for like 10 minutes while my friend's mother choking her out, And she realized that this is all because of her mental health condition. Well, finally, the friends that were there, the guy that was there at my friend's place, he stepped in and got her mom off of her. And so, of course, the mom,
that was wise. You have to look at safety. You don't want somebody being killed while you have this political discussion going on.
Exactly.
Ridiculous. Bring the sanity into the equation.
Exactly.
Save the life first, then discuss the condition second.
It's true. But, and it's not funny, but we laugh on the phone because that's just the type of relationship her and I have.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, now she was faced with this decision where should she get her mother some additional help, or should she allow her mom to be in her house knowing that this physical attack may happen again? Well, she made the decision to get her mom another level of care, which caused her mom to be 5150 and just kind of get a little bit treatment and stuff. And her mom despised her to this day for that, but she had to make that decision.
She made the right decision, and it's difficult. It's very difficult because the mother could be a danger to herself and obviously others.
Yeah.
I'm not one for medicating people into oblivion like they used to. That is terrible. When I pick up a new client, one of the first things I do is review the medication list, and then we're going to march down to the doctor and find out what we can get off of this.
Exactly.
However, there is a time and place for medications. And oftentimes when someone is acting out like the mother was, they are very agitated and distressed. They're usually frightened. They know at some level something's happening to themselves and they don't fully understand what. So they're scared and they're angry and they're acting out. Well, if you can give them a mild anti-anxiety medication that's going to take that edge off, where they can live more peacefully and enjoy their life and people around them can be safe, that's a good thing. That is a totally different scenario than over-medicating them just so they won't be a problem.
Exactly.
No, because you're still going to have some issues and problems that you deal with just as part of living, but take the edge off, and that is going to help the patient or the loved one and keep that person safe. So I think that's one of the first issues that people that are stepping in to take care of loved ones encounter, is getting the medications right. That is huge. How that can affect behavior.
I know, working for agencies that provide level care to people through caregivers, you find that same issue. I know I used to work for an agency, which I won't name, and as a supervisor, and one of the things I noticed that some of the clients that had high behavior was on my caseload, and I noticed that when we would take them to get evaluated through the psychiatrist, and the first thing they want to do is just put them on all this medication, and so I had a problem with that, because I'm like, well, let's address the issue, because giving them all this medication is not really helping them. It's just dulling them down, making them drowsy, tired, they sleepy, they can't do anything. They don't want to do anything, they're lethargic. And so, I had to get in there and really advocate that we get some of these medications off their list, because you still want people to have some quality of life.
Exactly.
And so I started to advocate, and we got some of the medications off the list. But I also had to deal with my staff at that time too, because I felt like some of the staff wasn't doing what they were supposed to do. We create these goals for some of these clients. You want to have them exercising, eating healthy, and doing different things, which contribute to their quality of life.
Really huge in affecting people's overall health and mental quality and behavioral issues.
Exactly. So,
remember, I don't know if you remember this, you might be too young, but there was Hinckley, and he made an attempt on the life of, I believe it was Gerald Ford. Oh, I hope I'm not getting this wrong because we have a public audience, but his defense was Twinkies. He ate too many Twinkies and had blood sugar spikes, and it made him go bananas, culminating in an attempt on the president's life. And so, that's just an extreme case, but diet does affect people's mental abilities and their behavior, and we see that very, very much in the seniors. And the over medications, it's a huge issue. I think it's very important for people to find a doctor who specializes in geriatric medicine, that understand the issues of aging. Not all of them do. My parents had a doctor at a major health provider, and he said he was a geriatric doctor. He didn't have a clue. He just didn't have a clue. He wasn't even aware of how a hospice operates. And it was very disconcerting, because if the doctors don't understand the issues of aging and how the body changes and how the mind changes and what people are up against, and emotionally what they're up against in terms of how the society views older adults, it's just extremely important to get the balance with all things. All the pieces of the puzzle have to fit, so it's important to have the right players at all different levels to help your parent.
And that's true in the mental health world as well, because there's a lot of stigma attached. And so because of that, a lot of doctors are not trained, like you said, with older adults, are not trained to deal with people who, And we're not talking about psychiatrists. We're talking about, you know, primary care physicians are not trained to, you know, know how to deal with people who may have a mental health condition. And so because of that, I feel like they don't get the treatment that they supposed to get.
Right, as you said, they just want to medicate them, quiet them down, and put them over there with the plant. You know, put them in the corner so they don't cause any problem. And they're people. They have feelings.
It's interesting.
I want quality of life for them.
When I did lead this particular company, so when I was there, and this just, and I really think about this sometimes. When I was there, I was a really strong advocate to really make sure that the people that was on my caseload was getting the best quality care from the caregivers that worked under me. I did my house visits. I mean, I trained them, I taught them, I made sure they knew how to do things that I knew how to do, just in case I was on vacation and was out sick or even left the company and stuff. And so, you know, when I was there, this particular client in general, I had got them on a really good exercise. I got a circle support, family,
Get them all on board.
Right, exactly. So we was all on the same page. Even
Makes a difference, doesn't it?
But it was interesting when I was there, he lost a lot of weight because they knew I was on top of it. They knew it, you know. But when I left this particular company, his health started to decline. The caregiver started to get lethargic. They wasn't doing it. And because the person that took my place wasn't really
monitoring.
Exactly. It was like in a paycheck, you know. And it's so sad that you find that going on today.
It is. I remember a client that I had when I had my in-home care company, and she had come home from a hospital stay, and the caregiver, I had 2 caregivers on the case, and you probably remember him as you were supervisor in my company.
Director,
Yes, director. And this particular caregiver loved to do the exercises with the clients, and he made things fun. And I went and did a house visit one time to do, you know, an inspection and quality of care inspection. And when I walked in, it was almost like seeing a whole different person, because he was doing the exercises with her and bringing some fun into her life. It was like a completely different person, and mentally she was very acute, whereas before she just kind of shut down and it's like, I'm old, I'm going to die anyway, you know, that attitude. And I would tell my clients, honey, it ain't over until the fat lady sings, and I ain't singing. But you know, I just told her, I would tell Mom, and it's like, she would go, oh, just let me go now. It's like, no, I don't make those decisions. I had to tell her one time in the hospital, Mom, I cannot euthanize you. You know, this is not a veterinary clinic. You know, you're here until you're called home. So make the best of it. Have fun. Let people take care of you. Wash your clothes, fix your meals. You sit around and, you know, listen to music, and she loved to watch the birds, you know, outside, and do the things that you like and let people wait on you. This is okay. But they still have to get up out of that chair and do a few things themselves. And one of the things, a huge point that I want to make here is people who are put into caregiving situations, and especially those around them, do not understand. We have to let people do as much for themselves as long as they can do it, because as soon as you start jumping in, you take away their confidence, you take away their ability, you take away their will to live.
Yes, exactly.
They need, even if it takes, like Mom, it would take her 5 minutes to get up out of the chair, but the minute you rush in to help them, first of all, you're going to knock off their balance, and you both can hit the floor. Unless you're a trained caregiver, stay away. You know, let them, unless you see that they're going to fall, then yes, catch them. But if they need to that time to get up from the chair, let them have it. You know, and the same with eating. Don't rush them when they're eating, or if they're trying to formulate a sentence or do something for themselves. Let them live as long as they can and enjoy their life and have outings. And I think that's why it's very important to keep people connected to Seniors First is a nonprofit organization out of Auburn, and they have friendly visitors, and they come down and they visit with people. And of course Mental Health America has that too, and they take them on outings, maybe to a museum. And one of the things I used to try to do when I had clients, I would find out what they used to like to do. Okay.
Exactly.
For instance, maybe someone used to enjoy golfing. Well, they're not going to be making 18 rounds of golf, but maybe a caregiver could take them to the putting green and they could watch people shooting buckets, you know, or you could go to a miniature golf or something within their capability range, but still tied to what they used to do. It makes a huge world of difference in the enjoyment of their life, which keeps them physically moving, which keeps them in better health, of course, as you mentioned, and it keeps them mentally more alert also.
Yeah. So what do you say for those caregivers that who have totally dedicated their lives to being a caregiver for their loved ones? You have people that move from one state to another, or like you yourself move from one location to another, and it just become their full-time and part-time job and some more. How can they, what can they do to take care of themselves, and how can they take care of themselves in that situation? Because I feel like for those that provide that amount of service to a loved one,
that level of care, it's dangerous to their own health.
Exactly.
What I explain to family caregivers is that if your health goes, what's going to happen to your loved one? And if anybody has the opportunity to hear, and you know Laura Wayman, the Dementia Whisperer, she gives a fantastic presentation on dementia. She trained me, she trained my caregivers. And she opens her presentation with her own universal experience with her mom, and how it's important to be able to be healthy yourself, to take care of her or him, whoever the family member is. I have had clients where the client outlived the caregiver. Then what do? And Laura uses the I don't want to give it away in case somebody has a chance to hear her, but say if, and I had this happen with a client, if you have someone that has Alzheimer's and you fall and have a stroke, the person with Alzheimer's is not going to know what to do. They're going to think that you're looking for something on the ground or you fell asleep on the ground. They won't know what to do, so you're not going to be able to get the emergency responder like you need, and then they're going to get scared and frightened, and then they're going to take off and wander or turn on the stove or get into mischief and get hurt. So I tell families, and I regularly do this, and I just did it again the other day, I have to make them aware that 68%, and this is a true statistic, folks, 68% of caregivers who are full-time caregivers for someone or the major caregiver will die before the person they're taking care of.
Wow.
And then the family caregivers will start to nod and go, yeah, it's probably the stress, huh? I go, yeah, the stress and physically wearing out, and you're not having any fun, you're getting isolated from the community and your friends, you're not getting out to do your own activities, you're tired, you're emotionally drained, and you will get sick more often, but you don't take care of yourself when you get sick because you don't have time. How can you get to the doctor? And pretty soon you just are so frustrated, and then it graduates to, I just don't care. And then it's like, okay, Scotty, beam me up. You know, it's very sad to see that happen. So I'm glad you brought up this point. It's extremely important for you to, as a caregiver, to take care of yourself so you can keep giving quality care to your loved one and make good decisions and respond appropriately if there's an emergency. If you're tired and burned out, you're not going to be able to do that. So there's a number of resources. Here in this area we have Del Oro, and that's a nonprofit organization. They are dedicated to helping family caregivers. They have all kinds of different programs, and they help people plug into what we call respite. That means that's just a period of time. It could be a couple days or even sometimes up to a week for a caregiver to go away and get recharged. Another option is hire an in-home caregiver. I remember one family when I was doing the intake assessment and interview, and it was the son, and he wanted to hire a caregiver to come in periodically, I believe twice a week for 6 hours, so he could just go in his bedroom and sleep. His mom was Alzheimer's, which meant she wandered at night. She sundowned, and she wandered at night, and he was just worn out. And he just wanted someone to come over, babysit mom, so he could go in and sleep.
Yeah.
You know, other times you need someone to come over, perhaps stay with mom or dad, so you can get out and do the grocery shopping, run the errands, get to the bank, or have some quiet to do all the bills, or just maybe you need that doctor's appointment or to get your hair cut.
Yeah.
Any number of things. So in-home caregivers are very, very, I think it's a wonderful solution. They're very trained on how to handle this kind of situation. They can come in and give you a break, basically. And what else is nice about this, people do not realize that your mom or dad, they need a new audience for their stories. Even if they're having dementia issues or have cognitive impairment, they're still usually aware enough. And they love telling those long-term stories back in the war when they were a kid.
Yeah.
And you get a friendly visitor to come in and be their new friend. They need people their own age that they can have their own friend.
Yeah, their peers.
They need, yes, their peers.
Exactly.
They're, even if it's not a peer, even if it's an older person and they have, say, you know, a 40 or a 50-year-old, they're not necessarily peers, but it's their friend.
Yeah.
You know, and they have a new audience for their stories and somebody that they can go out to lunch with or something, just like in the old days, you know, so they're not always having to be babysat by you.
Yeah.
That's very important, and a caregiver can fill that role. A lot of them they become very attached to their clients and love them, and love to take them out to lunch or to an activity and help bring joy to their lives. And then your family member is going to come back recharged, happier. You're going to be recharged, happier, and it's going to be much more peaceful around the home. So there's two options there. It's, you know, Del Oro respite and bring in a caregiver. But the first, I think the first step would be if a family caregiver, and you will feel the signs. You will know when you're starting to be on overload. You just start to kind of become numb.
Yeah.
And you start to feel like somebody pulled the bathtub drain and you're just slowly going down.
Yeah.
Is talk to any siblings or family members to explain exactly what's happening and you need some relief. Maybe another sibling can come just for the weekend.
Yeah.
So, and what is helpful about that also, Jesse, and you, I know, run into this, is family members do not understand until they wear the shoes.
Exactly.
One client I recall had an issue with the brother. She was taking care of a parent with dementia, and the brother just was in total denial and didn't believe her when she told him what she was dealing with, and thought she was just being, you know, a female over-exaggerating, which, you know, really sat well with her.
Yeah.
And she just could not get him to understand until he came. And she said, you know what? You better make a plan to come next week because I'm out of here. I need some time off. So either we're going to have to all come up with some money for an in-home caregiver or you just get on down here.
Yeah.
And he did. You know how long he lasted?
How long?
2 days.
Yeah.
And he was out of there.
Yeah.
He had to be there and go through what she was going through before he understood it. So if you can get a sibling in, they will kind of learn what you're going through and be a little bit more supportive.
Yeah.
So try to get a sibling, maybe a friend, even if it's for a few hours. Oftentimes neighbors will come over for a few hours, especially if it's a neighborhood where they've all known each other for a long time and the neighbors care about the person. Maybe they just don't want to impose, so they haven't offered. But if you talk to them about what's going on and just ask them and tell them, I'm not asking you to do laundry or dishes or anything, just sit and, you know, chat with dad or watch a movie with them. I need to run out and do some errands. You know, there are people who would be helpful in a church. You know, a lot of times church members will step forward, but if they don't know that there's a need, you know, they're just going to assume everything's okay if you're being brave and acting like everything's okay. But if you're being honest and, as you said earlier, transparent and telling them, you know, I really need some help here. You have people in the community that can help. So start with those closest to you and then gravitate to a, you know, paid caregiver. Or there are places too, many independent living or assisted living, when they have an apartment that's not rented, they will allow you to rent that for a day, a week, to have respite. So you can just go somewhere where somebody's going to change your bed, like a hotel, you know, and do the cooking, and you can just have some time off for good behavior. So there are different options out there.
I want to shift gears just a little bit. And you can kind of tell me what you think, because I kind of classify this as a different kind of caregiver. I was speaking with someone on the phone, was it yesterday, and the person was expressing to me how she does everything for her family. She's working a full and part-time job. Now she's picked up overtime on her full-time job because she's not getting the help from the person that should be helping her, which is her husband. She's doing everything for her kids. Financially, she's stressed. You know, she's just, you know, she can't pay all the bills because she has to pay this bill, and she's paying things for him, and you know, and for whatever reason, it just won't work. I'm just gonna be real blunt with it. And so she's so stressed out to the max, and she feels as if this is her responsibility to take care of this grown man. Yes, it's her responsibility to take care of her children because they're you know, teenagers. And so I tried my hardest to really explain this to her. You need to do something about your situation. You're stressed out, you're angry, you're frustrated. You know, she had like a little stroke before because she was stressed out.
Oh, boy.
And she just not taking care of herself because she's taking care of everybody else. And so she don't realize that you have ultimatums. I mean, you know, you can give this person an ultimatum like, look, you need to get a job or I'm out of here. I can't keep doing it by myself. But she won't do it, and she's so stressed out, you know, and I don't know. She
has herself in her own box.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
But she feels this service, but she cut off work, she come home, she cook, she clean. I mean, when I say she's doing it all, she's doing it all. And I don't know how to let her know that, no, you don't have to take care of this grown individual that is able and capable of getting a job.
Exactly. We care for, as my definition of caregiver was, caregivers take care of people who are sick, disabled, or otherwise dependent, unable to do for themselves. If you're taking care of a grown person,
exactly.
that is codependency in capital bold-faced letters, and you probably won't get through to her except maybe buy her a book on codependency and just kind of make it an easy read. She doesn't have a lot of time, you know, just leave it around for her to read it, or suggest she get into talking to a therapist to just unload, and hopefully, you know, maybe the therapist will pick up on that codependency. But I would tell her very quickly about that 68% factor, because she, especially if she's already had a stroke, she is setting herself up. And sometimes people do that. I know a lady when I was in the Bay Area that did that. She just kept pushing because she was hoping if she just collapsed and had to go to the hospital, this guy that, you know, her significant other would get a clue and get it, you know, that he needed to step up to the plate and help her. Yeah, you're shaking your head, you know, how effective that plan's gonna work. It doesn't, and there's nothing as good as coming out and saying it. Hey, bud, you know, here's the door, you know, either step up or step out, because you know, it's just, you're making yourself into a bond servant, you know, when you're working, because there are certain personalities that will let somebody else do for them as much as you're willing to do. They don't have that sensitivity to what you're going through because they're too self-centered. They're not emotionally grown up yet. And wah, wah, I need a bottle, wah, wah, diaper me, feed me, make me happy, do for me. You know, they're going to let you do it until you're totally burned out, and they'll go off probably and find out someone else that will do that. It's just amazing how that works. But yes, if she's had a stroke already, she's a prime candidate to just implode.
And I just kind of brought that up because it just, you know, and I like how you put that too about, you know, the definition of a caregiver. In this case, I just, you know, she's putting herself as a caregiver as if he is unable to do for himself.
No, that's
you know.
codependency.
Yeah.
Totally different than caregiving.
Yeah. So, is it good to hire a caregiver that does not have any experience, and why?
No. Unequivocally no. In fact, if a family member is going to step up to the plate and be a caregiver and they have not had any experience in caregiving, say for an older adult, I always recommend that they take some classes in it. And one time first of all, when I wanted to get into this, there was an organization up in Auburn that was giving classes in caregiving, and I am glad that I took them. I really learned a lot.
Yeah.
There are other organizations around, you know, with Google you can find anything and everything, but you want to take your training from a qualified and certified organization. But there are issues that you aren't even aware that are out there, and you need to be trained on how to handle them. And you need, as you said earlier, to be able to understand where that older adult is coming from and their mindset and why they may, you know, be looking at things differently than you. You need to be trained. You need to be trained on assist and transfer. You know, how to help somebody up and down from a chair, how to help somebody if they start to trip and stumble. You need to be trained on just how their bodies are different. You know, their skin starts to get thinner, and the lining of their mouth starts to get thinner. So what is spicy, what is maybe mild spicy to you would be hot chili pepper to them. So you need to be sensitive when preparing their meals. You need to be sensitive, say if you prepare a bath, what might be just, you know, warm to you might be scalding to them.
That's right.
And people aren't aware, and then if they've had issues with their, say, a parent before, they go, oh, that's mom, she's just being picky again. You know, not understanding they really have an issue, and this is painful for them. Or one of the big ones, dementia. I think everybody should have training, whether or not you have somebody diagnosed, because as we get older, I hate to say it's true, our brains shrink. It just happens, you know, and just imagine the things that go along with that. But your parents are not going to be as on top of things as when they were younger. They are going to forget, and especially with dementia, we know that people with dementia, those long-term memories are intact, but short-term are not. And families get very frustrated. Well, how come she can remember her 6th grade boyfriend and not what she had for breakfast? And I've already told her, how come she can't remember? Well, I can identify, and that's why I think, you know, no tear goes wasted in life, and we can use our experience to help others. So what helps me a lot of times with my senior clients that have dementia, they know that I understand the world because I have chemo brain, you know, and it is a medically recognized condition for those of us who've been through chemotherapy. It affects your mind. I don't remember as well, and it's harder for me to read and instantaneously absorb and process all that information the way I used to when I was younger. Sometimes I have to read it 2 or 3 times, and I know the differences. So people ask me, well, don't you remember? And I will look and say, of course I don't remember. I told you I'm not going to remember. I have short-term memory loss. So let me have a chance to write it down, or send me the procedures and instructions. You know, don't play that game with me. And people do that with their parents. It's unfair to them. And it's not because they're just trying to be a problem or get even with them. You know, all of these awful dynamics and scenarios. It's because they are dealing with a condition and maybe a medical disease, and you need to be sensitive to that. And I think they need to have the training. Safety is involved. In fact, when I had my company, there was 2 things that I really looked at. First of all, their skills, of course, and the heart. You can't have one without the other. And the same thing, you can have somebody that's all touchy-feely and warm and loves the seniors and, you know, love their grandmother and help their mom and whatnot, and come in and want to be a caregiver. Well, they have all the right heart, but without the skills. I would never hire anybody who did not have at least 1 year of experience. Because it takes that training and skill level to be able to do it right and keep your loved ones safe and keep yourself safe in the process.
And I definitely agree with that. Training and educating people are definitely something that is needed to be an effective caregiver. I know one thing that we did when I was working for you as a director, we provided ongoing training, monthly training for dementia, Alzheimer's dementia. And it was very effective with the caregivers and with the family members as well, because what happened was, for those that took the training, they had an opportunity to come back and receive the training again as a refresher, just in case they forgot something, or if they were able, or if they ran up against a really difficult client or some behaviors that they didn't understand, they were able to come to this training and share it with other caregivers. I mean, it was just awesome.
That was fun, wasn't it? When they would come back and say, "We had this person who would not take a shower, would not get in," and she used what she learned in the dementia training, and was able to get him into the shower with no problem after that. And that was exciting to hear her share that with the others, so they could pick up and try that.
So, I know we run out of time, but let's talk a little bit about private caregiving.
Oh, yeah.
So give me your thoughts on that, just, right quick. What are your thoughts on private caregiving?
Okay, well, Jesse, as you know, I'm a champion for the underdog, and I will talk about pink elephants in the room. And there's a lot of private caregivers out there. You and I knew some people who were very good and effective private caregivers, but for the most part, you're going to get what you pay for. And Jesse and I, folks, we would have 100 applicants, and this is true, isn't it? 100 applicants for a position. Out of 100, we might get 10 qualified to go to the interview, and we were lucky if 5, made it to the actual scheduling the interview, and then if 2 showed up, right?
Exactly.
It was very hard finding good qualified caregivers. There are a lot of people who decided, oh, okay, in the 1850 it was the gold rush. Now it's the senior rush. There's all these seniors and there's money to be made. And what I have learned, there's a lot of caregivers that are opportunists.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they're going to get out there in Sun City or in Granite Bay, and first thing they do is they're giving that house a scope. And if they decide you have money, they're going to be very nice and ingratiate themselves and then start helping themselves. And this is the issue with if you hire privately, like off of Craigslist or stuff, you, as an individual, probably do not know how to do a thorough background check, and you're not going to, because you think, oh, isn't she sweet? That's not necessary.
I'm saving money.
Yeah, I'm saving money. And Little Miss Sweet, she knows how to play Little Miss Sweet. Believe me, just about 98% of those clients that came to me had already had a prior experience, bad experience with a private caregiver, and sometimes even another agency. They'd all been ripped off, and they'd all been had, and we did thorough background checks, federal and state. You need to have those background checks, and as you mentioned, the training, the ongoing training. Private caregivers that you get yourself, they're not getting the ongoing training, they're having no supervision, nobody to ensure that they're keeping on top of things and doing the right things for the client and the safe things. It's very, very risky, and I know I'll probably be jumping in here. You probably have another question, but I'm pretty sure you'll be asking about this. Private versus an agency. When you're dealing with an agency, they are already doing all of the background check. They have workers' comp coverage and general liability. And what I found with caregivers, and this was why I was so glad when you started working for me, because you helped nip this in the bud. But they get on the job, and if they thought somebody had money, or they think that, if you have a business, you have money. And then they're on the job. This gal was on the job second day, and she filed a workers' comp claim. Well, she didn't realize that there's a thing called Google. She told me what this condition that she had was, and I'm looking it up, and it turns out it had to be a prior condition. She couldn't have had this happen on that second day that she worked. And so I gave that to the insurance company, and they did their research. And they bounced her claim because they found out this was a pre-existing condition. You know, this wasn't something that was incurred on that day. But they will take you for a ride, and they will come in and they will file a workers' comp claim against you, or general liability, or just things will disappear. And I don't mean to sound like a cynic, but you know what? After having my company, I am somewhat cynical because I've seen it all. Like that State Farm commercial. I know a few things because I've seen a few things. And it is terrible. So you really have to screen people who are going to work for you and do those background checks and get references. People aren't willing to go through the hassle, and as you said, they want to save money. You really are not saving money, because here is how it works, folks. The IRS does not acknowledge private caregivers as contractors. No, 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 no. Because of the level of supervision, you are their employer, which means you are liable to carry workers' comp, general liability, and do all payroll taxes, which adds 15 to 25% on top of your basic salary wage. Well, people don't do that. They'll just slip it under the table, and they think, oh, okay, you know, nobody's going to know. Well, as soon as, well, you could get caught in an IRS audit, and as soon as, you know, if somebody decides that you have enough resources, you will be surprised. There will be a workers' comp claim or something, you know, or a suit, because you know, you better have general liability, because they will claim that, you know, they tripped over your front porch step and da-da-da-da-da, you know. It's just amazing what you and I have seen. So
I have to cut it short.
Sorry.
We're running out of time. But we'll get a chance to kind of revisit this conversation again.
There's a lot of information, isn't there?
And thank you for being on our show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
And that's it for today's edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular segment, or if you have questions about the show, or if you even want a DVD copy of the show, please dial 916-366-4600. Thank you.
When I think of where I've been, the good times and the bad, on a scale of 1 to 10, either way I'm glad, 'cause I'm not alone. As I'm reaching for the phone, your voice is there, you really care, you're my comfort zone. Sometimes when I'm lost, crushed beneath the pain, though I can't afford the cost, I just smile and play the game. But there's a healing place where I cannot pretend. Your smiling face, your heart's embrace heals me again. So even when the storm is strong and I'm deaf to my own cry, I faintly hear a distant song, and I simply can't deny that I'm not alone. 10,000 times I've known my best bet is that first step for